Hello and welcome to Long Story Short Q&A. My name is Katie, and today the question that we're going to be exploring is, aren't all religions basically the same? I am here with Dr. Graham Blaikie. So Graham, what do you think?
Well, why don't we start with some numbers? Because there are 5 major religions in the world: Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism. And then there are around 4,000 smaller, distinct movements. And so as we're looking at these, it's natural to ask, well, at the end of the day, when all is said and done, when we've boiled everything down to its essence, aren't they basically saying the same thing? And on the surface, that makes sense because there are a lot of similarities. I mean, most religions have, some kind of priesthood. There are sacred spaces. There are religious rituals. There's prayers and so on. So you look at that and you think, well, gee, they're all the same. But dig under the surface and you find that they're really very, very different. I think we can illustrate this with asking one of the most basic questions that you can ask in religion, and that would be the question, who is God? God is arguably the subject of religion, so let's start with that. Who is God? And when we ask that question, we've got to look at what each religion says about God. So we start with the 3 monotheistic religions. Mono meaning one, theos meaning God, one God. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all say that there is one personal God to be worshipped. But then we've got Hinduism, which is polytheistic, many gods, in fact, up to 33 million gods. And then lastly, we have Buddhism, which is pantheistic, pan meaning all or everything. All is God. Everything is God. God is everything. He's not personal. So just with that very starting question, who is God, we have major incompatibilities between these different religions. Well, why don't we dig a little bit deeper? Why don't we narrow things down some more? And why don't we compare 2 of the monotheistic faiths, in fact, the 2 biggest ones, Christianity, which has 2.3 billion adherents, and Islam, which has 1.9 billion. So when we look at those 2 faiths, they're both monotheistic, they both worship God, but Muslims worship God by the name Allah. Christians worship the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh. Aren't they just worshiping the same God by 2 different names? Well, it might seem so, but let's dig a little bit deeper. Let's talk about who this God is, because in Islam, this God does not have a son. In fact, to Muslims, that notion would be blasphemous. Whereas in Christianity, God does have a son. He is the father of the Lord Jesus Christ. And ask any Westerner, who do you think Jesus is? And 9 out of 10 times people will say, well, God's son. Jesus is God's son. Okay, well, let's focus a little more on who Jesus is. In Islam, Jesus is a significant prophet. But at the end of the day, he is just a man. But in Christianity, Jesus has the stuff of deity. He is God in human form. And the Apostle Paul says in the book of Colossians that in him, in Jesus, all the fullness of deity dwells in bodily form. All right, what about Jesus' death? Well, in Islam, which is based on the Quran, which was written 600 years after the events of Jesus' life, so not written by eyewitnesses. But in Islam, Jesus didn't die, and he certainly didn't die on a cross. No, some substitute took his place on the cross, and God rescued him from death and miraculously translated him to heaven. But in Christianity, the death of Jesus on the cross is absolutely central to the mission of Jesus. He came to die on the cross, not to have his place taken by a substitute, but to be our substitute for our sin, the payment for our sin that we should have paid, but he paid it for us. So you see that there are some pretty significant differences there. And of course, Jesus died on the cross. He literally bodily rose from the dead, according to the eyewitnesses. He appeared to many of them over the next 40 days. And then he was taken up to be with the Father in his resurrected, glorified body. So you can see as we've drilled deeper that those surface similarities really aren't the issue. There are a lot of very different claims, and we can only come to terms with them by investigating the claims and the evidence for each of them. Lastly, I want to focus on some similarities between all of the religions except Christianity, and in this, Christianity is unique. Because in all of those other religious movements and the major religions, at the end of the day, it comes down to seeking after God and then living your best life, hoping that your works will present you as acceptable to God. But Christianity is not that at all. I think the essence of Christianity is spelled out in Jesus' parable of the shepherd who leaves the 99 sheep to seek for the one. He comes chasing after us. We don't seek him. God seeks us. And like the father in the parable of the prodigal son, he comes running and offering forgiveness and embraces us no matter what we've done when we acknowledge our brokenness and our sin to him. So you can see with just these few details that we've teased out that the religions are very, very different under the surface and not at all compatible in what they teach, which is why Jesus never said, hey, pick a religion, any religion, whichever one works best for you. He didn't say that. What he said, as he was anticipating going to the cross in our place for our sin, he said, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to God the Father except through me.